What in the world is happening with King County real estate? Woo, let's look at this. All right, you're looking at 10 years, 10 years of supply and demand. And I think it really paints a very clear picture of what's happening. Um, the green is the supply, number of listings any given month. And blue is depending the number of the went under contract any given month. So just looking at the graph from a high level overview, you can see that something around 2023 cut buyers in half, lowered demand by 50%. Just the demand went away. Now, that was the spike in interest rates. That's what happened at the end of 2022, 2023. Interest rates tripled. Demand went away. People said we can't afford to buy houses. That's half as much. And that's not come back. So you can see that over the last 3 years, 23, 24, 25, and now into 26, that demand has not come back. The difference in the pandemic, you had a slight increase in demand, but mostly just a drop off on the inventory and creating a whole lot of pressure in terms of multiple offers and houses selling quickly in our area. But pre-pandemic, you had increasing supply with relatively stable demand. So, supply ran up around high threes, 4,000 units per month at a peak, May, June, every year. That was down a little bit, never quite touched 4,000 units in the pandemic. But then the whole thing just went off the cliff in 23, 24, 25. It's been unwinding. But what's been unwinding is the supply. Supply has been coming back. Demand has not been coming back. So last month, if you narrow this down and just looked at last month, you'll see, if you just look at the last 2 years, you'll see that last month's available inventory outpaced last year's available inventory, same time, right? You're seeing this is more available inventory in February than the last 2 years. We're on pace to increase inventory, and demand is unlikely to catch up. That means if you're selling, you're going to be selling into an ever-increasing pool of potential homes for a limited pool of buyers to buy. That means you have to be strategic. That means you have to be right on price. And if you're not right on price, you need to jump and get right on price, because inventory is just going to keep increasing between now and May or June. So you got to get it right. And if you don't, you got to adjust. That's what this says. If you're a buyer, you're going to have the pick of the litter. And you should plan on that getting better and better as the year progresses. Okay. I mean, at some point, May, June, inventory will go down. But what's predictable is it'll still be better than more better for you as a buyer than last year. That's predictable with no big increase in competition. That's what it's looking like. So if you have questions about your situation, you should let me know. I'm happy to talk about any situation, because everyone's unique. Every neighborhood, every block. How do you get the price right? Well, you got to really look to see what the market's saying. So if you got questions, you need anything, Aaron Hendon with Christine and Company over at eXp Realty. See you next month. Hey, what in the world's happening with Kitsap Real Estate? Well, let's check it out. You're looking at supply and demand last 2 years. Green is the supply, number of new listings. Blue is the demand, number of homes that went under contract, came off the market every given month. You can see a couple of things pretty clearly, and this is distinct from King County, so it's a different look. That while supply is outpacing demand reliably, not by much, okay, it's not King County. There's way more demand relative to supply in Kitsap. That means it's easier to sell in Kitsap. It means it's harder to buy in Kitsap. It means if you find a house that you like, you probably are going to have competition for it when you go buy it, bidding wars, things like that. There's an overall suppression on price just given the interest rates, but this is way more competitive than King County is. Now, it's, the last year, it looks like we're almost leveling off with the peak in inventory. This February, we almost got to 300 homes. Last February, that's March, yeah? Last February, weren't even close, 242. Previous February, 300. So we're looking at this could be a cooling of the inventory, like a leveling off. Like we know what we're going to get. Now, King County is still on the explosive side. We'll see what Pierce is doing, but those are the larger counties generally pave the way. Right now, Kitsap County is showing very strong for sellers and not, and much more challenging for buyers than the surrounding counties. If you got questions about your particular situation, we should talk because Kitsap covers a wide variety of different areas from waterfront to mountains. So it really is difficult to pin down in an overall view. But overall, Kitsap is the strongest of the counties in terms of its supply and demand pointing towards sellers. Okay, everyone else is pointing towards buyers much more strongly. This is a really good news if you're selling in Kitsap. All right, but again, every case is different. So give me a call. Let's talk about your situation. Aaron Hendon with Christine and Company. Party on, Wayne. See you next month. Hey, what in the world is happening with Pierce County real estate? Woo, let's look, boy, because this is distinct. This is different than King County. So you're looking at the supply and demand. Green is the supply, listings, blue, demand, contracts. And you can see last month you had supply outstripping demand, right? That's been pretty constant that we have more supply than demand. But look how close that is. That is really, really close. We're not even really beating last year's numbers by that much in terms of inventory. So like Kitsap, if you watched the Kitsap update already, but unlike King County, it looks to me like we're beginning to hit a level of leveling off on homes available. I would be surprised if this year dramatically outpaced last year. At this rate, it does not look like it's going to dramatically outpace last year. Might get a little bit more. Last year was a little bit more than the year before. So maybe a month peaks over the top. But the demand is really solid in Pierce County. Now, as we reach the spring, March, April, May, there's going to be more and more inventory. So it's going to get easier to buy for the next 3 months and a little more tricky to sell. But relative to King County, Pierce County sellers look good. Now, every case is unique. Pierce County goes from Tacoma to out in the boonies. So there's all sorts of different metrics that we need to look for individual houses. If you've got a house that you're looking to buy or sell in Pierce County, let me know. Let's look at it together. That's what I'm here for. Aaron Hendon with Christine and Company over at EXP. Let me know what questions you got. Talk to you next month. Hey, what in the world's happening with Snohomish County real estate? Well, let's check it out. Looking good, folks. So you're looking at the supply and demand for the last 2 years. Green is the supply, blue is the demand. And a couple things stand out about this is that inventory is increasing. This is following the King County model rather than the Pierce and Kitsap County model. This is interesting to note that there's differences in those two different expressions of the real estate market, particularly Kitsap and Pierce look very different than this. This looks much more like King County, meaning we're seeing ever increasing peaks in inventory, new listings with an increasing gap between buyers and sellers, meaning it is harder to sell in Snohomish than it was last month, and it's be harder to sell predictably in March, April, May, and maybe even into June. Okay, there's unlikely to be demand is unlikely to catch up to supply. So if you're looking to buy in Snohomish, you should have a much easier time doing that than if you are trying to sell. Sellers need to hit it just right or move quickly off the price that they wanted into finding a better price. They're going to need to move quickly because there's going to be an ever increasing amount of inventory coming your way as competition without a commensurate increase in buyers. It's just unlikely to happen. So if you're selling, be careful, get it right, or move. If you're buying, take your time. Got to pick up a litter. Now, Snohomish is a huge county, lots of different areas, lots of different properties. Different properties behave differently. Different areas behave differently. Let me know if you're looking to buy or sell in Snohomish. Let me see how I can help you pinpoint the right price. My name's Aaron Hendon with Christine and Company over at eXp Realty. Talk to you next month. Oh, what in the world is happening with Vashon Real Estate? Well, let's check it out. Let's see. You are looking at the last 2 years, supply and demand. Supply, the green, the number of new listings every month. Blue, demand, number of homes that went under contract. All right. So you are seeing a fairly typical year here that inventory is going up every single month. You got December, January, February. That's not unusual. Was this December here? What is this? Nope. December, January, February. February didn't go up as much there, but it's certainly doing it here. It's really typical for this to happen. More and more inventory coming to market as the spring happens because people, I don't understand, have it in their head. It's better to sell in the spring. There's no statistical evidence for that at all. You're much better off buying in a situation like this at the end of the year when there's less sellers and relatively more buyers, but people do what they do because so far anyway, it's still free country. So if you're looking to sell, what's predictable is you're going to have more and more competition. Wouldn't be surprising if we got over 20 homes listed on Vashon in March. That would be not surprising at all. And maybe even more than that, get up to 25 as we approach April and May. Pretty typical the last couple of years, where buyers have been fairly steady. If we zoom out here and get a bigger picture, let's go do a 10-year picture because you'll see, okay, so if you're nerdy, this is interesting. You got pre-pandemic, pandemic, and then post-pandemic. Okay, so pre-pandemic, 2016 through 2020. You got up to 35 homes, 40 homes, almost 40 homes listed in a given month, where buyers fairly steady, right? In fact, going down a little, trending down before the pandemic. Then the pandemic came, and while buyers stayed pretty much the same there, people stopped selling. So that's why there was all that pressure on price because supply and demand, right? Not just a good idea. But it wasn't there was an increase in demand. It was just there was a very strong decrease in supply. Now that supply hasn't really come back. Now what happened in 23, we tripled the interest rates as a people, as a species. We tripled the interest rates, which meant people stopped buying, okay, which capped the number of buyers. You can see buyers are down significantly from the peaks here, pre-pandemic or even pandemic, way down, okay? And inventory last year, up. Looks like it's trending up to meet pre-pandemic levels. Well, if you're going to get an increase in inventory, an increase in supply to pre-pandemic levels, but you're not going to get pre-pandemic demand, you're going to get lower prices. Prices are going to be suppressed. There's no two ways about it. I don't think that means a collapse of anything. I just think it means you need to, price it smart. You can't price it based on the past. You got to price it based on the present. Get an accurate reading of the present. It may not be worth it to you to sell right now. That's fine, but you can't ask for more than the market will provide. Look, you can do what you want, but you're not going to get more than the market's willing to offer. So you got to be smart. And if you miss the price, adjust quickly, especially now because you're going into a time of year where there's going to be more and more inventory. So you're going to have more and more competition. So if you list it in March or April and you don't price it right, don't get it sold in a week or two, adjust quickly because there's just going to be more competition coming on the market behind you without a relative increase in demand. So if you're buying, you look good. You should be able to shop for the next 3, 4, 5 months. and pick something up at a price that works. If you're selling, you got to be careful. You got to be smart. Now, every house is different. The north end and the south end are 10% different in price. Easy. There's all sorts of different areas on the island. Everything needs an individual consultation. It's very much a collection of unicorns. Okay, it's very hard to generalize the price on Vashon. So if you're interested, let me know. Happy to do all that math with you on anything you wanted to know. Meantime, you got any questions about real estate? Love talking about it. Aaron Hendon with Christine and Company over at eXp Realty. Peace out. Party on, Wayne.